Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that book or author that you may never have heard of, sort of like the treasure hunt for a reader. The goal from my podcast is to bring to you those books or authors that you may never have found, but may be the treasure you've been hunting for all along. Today in episode 43, I bring to you author Bob Gonzalez. We're going to talk about a little bit about who he is, what he's published, and maybe what his plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Hello, Adrian. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here today. Why don't let's begin? Why don't you give an introduction to you to the viewers?
Okay. Well, I was raised in Pennsylvania. Um, I grew up in the mountains in northeastern Pennsylvania, actually, and I moved to Florida in my 20s. And when I came down here, I pursued my love of fishing, mostly in the Gulf of Mexico, because from the time I was a little kid, I always loved to fish. Even in Pennsylvania, when I was there, I enjoyed lake fishing and rivers and streams. And here in Florida, where I am now, I just continued it, but now in the ocean. I decided to move to Florida because I used to come down because I played college baseball, and we used to come down here every spring. And
Yeah.
one of those springs, I just decided, I said, man, I've got to stay down here. It's just too cold up north. So, yeah, so I came down here and I stayed. And after like 15 years of being out on the water, I said, you know what? I've got some stories here I think people would really enjoy. And I wrote the book, Flicker in the Water. And I'm glad that I did. It was a labor of love for me. And it was, I know, I just felt like I was still out on the water every word that I wrote in the book.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the beauty of writing, right? Being an author is, for almost all of us, for the most part, it is passion project, right? It's really something you truly enjoy, something you really want to get out there and share, and that's really the
Yeah.
beauty of writing these things. Quick question for you, being from Pennsylvania. I'm not aware of this or not, but is there ice fishing over there when that stuff freezes over?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I did some ice fishing. Ice fishing is fun. You drill a hole, a circular hole, maybe about a foot, in circumference, and you put a couple of sticks to hold with a little flag, and you drape your line in the water. And when you get a bite, the flag lifts up to let you know that you have a bite. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed that very much.
Did you do it when you were doing it? Did you do it where you were just out in the elements fishing, or I know now they have all these little pop up things that pop up over the holes, and you're kind of semi warm in these little tents and little cabin looking things that you can ice fish from.
No, I was out in the elements. We actually had a snowball fight a few times.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I know they do a lot of ice fishing, in a lot of other
Mhm.
areas, and I know Pennsylvania definitely freezes up enough for it. So I was curious if that was the
Yeah,
thing.
for sure. Yeah.
So why don't you give us a little bit about, influences? Was there something, I know you talked about you had the stories, you really wanted to share them. Was there something else that maybe influenced you to, I really do want to kind of write this book?
Well, like I said, fishing was always one of the loves in my life, and I know that fishing and the oceans, and they have more than just a meaning that you go and throw your line in the water and you bring up a fish. I think there's a spiritual and a human component to fishing that I talked about in the book. I mean, fishing has been around since mankind has been around. It's in the Bible. It's fish and fishing has always meant a lot, and in the oceans has meant a lot to mankind. So I took it from that perspective more than just, oh, if you use this bait, this fish will bite, or if you use that bait or this hook.
Yeah.
Although there is some of that in there, but I took it a broader perspective in writing the book. In
Okay.
fact, I learned a few things while I was writing it, but we'll get to that when you ask some of those other questions.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do this then. Why don't you give a kind of a summary or synopsis about what A Flicker in the Water is about?
Well, it's a collection of stories. A lot of the stories are my own, not all of them, but a lot of them are. It's written in in a way that is good for kids, 7 or 8-year old up until adult. Um, it talks about fishing in Cuba, where my dad was born and raised until about the age of 14. And actually, that was part of the inspiration for the book too, because The Old Man in the Sea was written from Cuba,
Yep.
and yeah, and Mariel Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, wrote the foreword for my book. She loved it; she thought it was great, and which it meant a lot to me that she did that. And I talk about fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I talk about the Atlantic Ocean. I talk about things that I learned. Like, I didn't know that the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel is actually not a sea; it's a freshwater lake.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah. And I learned about the way the currents flow in the Gulf. I mean, there's some really interesting stuff in there on how all that works. I think the readers will really. I have diagrams and photos and everything. I think they'll really enjoy.
Yeah, that sounds great because it sounds like you came from a couple of different angles, right? You do have some instructional stuff that you do have in the story. You do have some in terms of information, like you're saying, about the different locations and the different bodies of water, and then stories, right? Which are always the best part of any of these things that you're doing. Recollections, the stories that build up that you really don't want to lose, right? And those are the things you want to put down on paper to keep them going.
Yeah. Now, probably the best story and what inspired the title of the book, "A Flicker in the Water," was a story about a tuna that we were battling in the Gulf of Mexico, and we fought this fish for several hours. He bit, around 2 o'clock in the morning, and the fight was on, baby. uh, and I talk about the fight from the time that it bit, and actually before that, I talk about the trip just to get there, and then what
Yeah.
we were doing while we were there until he bit, and then I tell all about that story. And the readers, if they want to know, they could read about that.
Yeah. So, would you consider that the favorite story in the book?
I think so, because that's what inspired the title.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you have, usually I like to ask the question on the opposite side of that. Did you have a scene that was hard, either as you were writing it coming together, or a scene that was just difficult for some reason?
There were one or two that were I had to kind of like fight through them. But I was pleased with the way they came out in the end. I talked about the inland waterways and how after
Mhm.
some rough weather we had to take those a few times just to stay safe. And I talked about that, and that it's more fun for me to talk about the adventures on the ocean. But I got through it okay, and I think readers will enjoy that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, we usually I ask, and we did talk about this a little before in terms of research, right? And like you're saying, there is some information that you're putting in there with some of the bodies of water. Why don't you explain some of the research you did do for this book?
Well, I researched the currents. There's a loop current in the Gulf of Mexico, which I always knew there was, but I didn't know how it worked, and I didn't know how vast it was either. I mean, it's incredible. It's one of the fastest moving currents in the whole world. It moves at like 6 miles an hour. Always, it forms a loop. It comes up into the Gulf of Mexico from the Southern Caribbean, and it does like a circle. So that's why they call it a loop. And then it always runs between Cuba and Key West, and then connects with the Gulf Stream. I didn't know it connected with the Gulf Stream, but yeah. And then it also has offshoots that see, this current is 150 miles wide, and it's like 3 or 4 thousand feet deep. And the offshoots that it gives off, sometimes those offshoots can last for 2 years, which is amazing. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, they go. Some of them go in a clockwise way that is warm, and then other ones go counterclockwise, which is cold water. And they usually make their way towards the Texas Mexico coast, and then they dissipate. But that's a lot of times they'll last 18 months to 2 years. I
yeah,
did, and yeah, that was one thing. Another thing was about I researched NOAA and the National Oceanic Administration and places like that, and the oceans, the bottom of the ocean floors. There's a picture in the book in there. If you look at it, they're stitched together, like, and the stitch runs continuously all around the Earth. So it's almost like the oceans are like the thread that ties the Earth together, which was incredible to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I
Yeah.
mean, this sounds. I mean, your book sounds interesting just from the get go, but it's great that you come from all these different aspects, right? And you're really, again, you're tying in stories, which are always a great read. You're tying in instruction as you're kind of maybe explaining, how you're doing some of the parts of the fishing, or what rods you're using, or the hooks or anything on that side. And then you're explaining all this other information that a lot of people take for granted, with fishing, because a lot of people basically assume you get a hook, you get something on the hook, you
Mhm.
toss it in, and you just wait for something to grab. But it's really not the case, right? So you're really coming from all the different aspects to explain how much really is involved when you do take fishing in general seriously.
Oh yeah, there's a lot involved, and there's always times when you're not going to catch fish. That happens to everybody.
Yeah,
You just have to fight. Yeah, you have to fight through those times, and usually, if you do, you'll eventually come out good on the other side.
yeah, yeah. I guess it's like with anything, right? For every one time you have that triumph or that victory, there's all these
Yeah,
other times where you're coming home
yeah,
empty-handed, or it just
yeah,
didn't happen. But it's
yeah.
about balance. It's about a balance to get to that point,
Mhm, mhm,
to have that victory, to have that triumph that
mhm.
makes all the other times worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I tried to keep in the book a little bit was fun. Was I tried to use humor a few times, and I cut the sense of fun that fishing can be, and just being out on the ocean, how much fun there is, as long as you stay safe and take
Yeah.
all the necessary precautions. How much fun there is to be had out there.
Yeah. Do you go into some of the safety stuff that you should be doing as well, on some of the instructional side of it?
A little bit. I talk about always wearing, the life vests and the EPIRBs. That's like flares that you should always have on board with you. Think bilge pumps in your boat to, in case water starts coming in, you flush it back out. That sort of thing.
Did you ever?
Always
Yeah.
always check the weather reports too. You don't want to get caught out there in a storm if you can help it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely on that side. But that's one question I was thinking of right now. And again, if it's a part of the book, you don't have to go into it. But did you ever get caught in either a storm, like you said, you take some of the waterways to kind of get away from the storm? Were there ever instances where you did kind of get caught, and luckily, nothing really happened, or you have the other case where your ship basically just dies in the middle of nowhere, and you're kind of stuck there for a little bit too? Did you ever have those instances?
I've never been stuck anywhere, but I did get caught in a few storms. And it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't life threatening or anything, but you sure take a beating out there.
Yeah.
You get tossed around. Like I like to use the line about a few weeks ago. I went out and it was rough, and I said I felt like a piece of loose change in the washing machine. You know, because it was bouncing around so much.
Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation for it.
Yeah,
Uh, Fishing again is essentially not only a pastime, but it's a sport, right? It's considered a sport. Did
it's a
sports
sport.
play?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you mentioned about spring training with baseball. Did sports play a big part of your life growing up, or maybe still do?
Yeah, I played baseball in high school and in college, and then I still watch sports, not as much as I used to, but I still watch the games. And I actually sent a copy of my book to the Rays owner because I'm in Florida, the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah,
And I wrote a little blurb on the back of the book. I want them to win a World Series here. They went to Game 6 in 2020. They lost to the
yeah,
Dodgers, but I like to see them win it all one of these years.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Do you still fish as much as you used to, or is it have you
Not as
turned it a
much.
little?
Not as much. I went out a couple times this past summer. I'll probably go out again this coming summer. It's so expensive anymore. The fuel costs are just outrageous. So it's hard to keep keep fishing like that because of the
Yeah,
expense. Yeah.
I, I think that goes with everything nowadays. Everything's just so expensive. hard to keep doing some of the things that we used to do when it was much easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So
I'm watching. I have to watch my elderly mom now too, so it's harder for me to get. I don't have that free time like I used to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's always difficult. And that's great that you're helping her out and taking care of her on that side as well.
Yeah.
Um, going forward, do you plan on writing again? Do you plan on writing anything else? If you did, and if it's not, say, fishing, did you have a plan for something else you were thinking of writing?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked that, and I'm glad you asked about the sports because um, one thing that I like to do when I'm writing is I like to play with words, and I like to use phrases that are not normally expressed in a certain way to make the same point. And I have a book that's pretty much all finished now. I haven't sent it to the publisher yet. It's about the baseball franchises, all of them, all 32 teams. I talk about their histories and uh, I talk about the players, and I talk about like from 1900 on up till today.
Yeah.
Uh, and I have some poems too in the book about some of the football teams. I write poems about the teams.
Were you a big fan of football? I mean, you're Pennsylvania, so you definitely got either Eagles or Steelers.
Yeah, I used to like the Steelers, back in the day. Yeah, I've always liked football. I liked all the sports, basketball, football, hockey, baseball, fishing, everything, hunting. I always enjoyed the outdoors. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
great. It's great to hear you say hockey because I always feel bad that it never got the popularity that it deserves. And
Yeah.
it's always so. I mean, they don't even count it, and even though it's one of the majors, they never count it as one of the majors. And I was like, such an amazing sport that just doesn't get the love it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. Boxing too. I used to like
Yeah,
boxing back in the day. The big fights that they used to have, that was always fun to watch.
yeah, that was a big thing that I used to watch with my grandfather a lot. We would always watch, just about if it was on TV when they used to have Tuesday night fights or the free
Yeah.
fights or any of
Yeah.
the major ones, we would watch all of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when do you have plans on when you would think you would want to release the book on the baseball teams?
Maybe towards the end of this year or next year sometime. Um, that's what I have in mind for now. It takes a long time though to edit and to get all the
Yeah,
photographs and do everything. It takes a while. When I first started doing this, I thought you could put this together, in a few weeks, but no, it takes months.
it does. It really
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, that's great. I would assume that would do very well because, you know, baseball lore, baseball history, baseball fans in general, that's always a huge thing that they just truly enjoy and love.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you have a favorite team?
Baseball, not as much. Though it's the one sport that I never fully got into as much. I played it a ton, played softball, played baseball a ton, but I played football, loved hockey, right? So football and hockey are probably my two major sports that I watch the most. I'm in California, so basketball is Lakers. I
Yeah,
don't follow any LA teams. I follow the Minnesota Vikings, and I have since I was in school. And
yeah,
you know, I can't say why because my father's a Steelers fan, right? My
yeah,
most of my family is mixed in terms of who they follow, but it was just I saw the team, fell in love with the team, and I've been following them for almost 40 years now. So it's
wow, yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember back in the day with Fran Tarkington and the Purple People Eaters and all that.
yeah, yep.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, sports has always been a huge thing for me too. Absolutely love it. Love almost all of it. Like I said, even though I don't have a favorite baseball team, I do watch all the playoffs. I watch the series. I've always followed all of them. But yeah, sports has always been big for me as well.
what about fishing?
Fishing, I have a story of my grandfather used to do it when he was younger. We never really got a chance to do it because he was a little older at the time and school and everything. We never really got a chance to do it. But there was a couple of times when I was very little, because we used to go camping all the time. We used to always go to Yosemite in the summer, um, every year since I was very, very tiny.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
there was a couple of times where he bought me, I don't know if they still have them, but they used to have the little kid, fishing reels, right? And
mm-hmm.
he bought these little things that they look like salmon roll, but of course they're not real. But he would take me, he knew there wasn't any fish in there, but he would take me into these little, creeks and stuff as we were going up to the camping site and just let me sit there. So really that's my memory of that because we never really did get a chance to go out and do it. But
Mm.
there's still great memories, right? Great memories to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this book coming out. You have the book out now. And when did you actually publish the Flicker in the Water?
It was May 31st of 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you have the baseball book coming out. As you mentioned, and as all the authors know, takes a ton of work to get through everything, to check, recheck,
Yeah.
edit, do the whole thing,
Yeah.
finally
Yeah.
release it. Right. So that day comes. Say, like you said, hopefully end of this year, maybe end of next year. That day comes and you release that book. Do you think you have another one in you? Is there something you thought about, or you just like, let me just focus on this, and when that day comes, I'll think that there's another one I'm interested in doing?
After that one, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. um, I'll always be doing poems though, because the poems you can do kind of like short stories,
Yeah,
and that if you find a subject you like and make the writing interesting, can be a lot of fun. So maybe I
yeah,
could do something like that.
yeah. It is. It's interesting how poetry kind of ties in for a lot of people in terms of writing. Poetry is something
Yeah,
I've done since I was a kid. I still do. Have thought about releasing a poetry collection at some point. But what's interesting in poetry is there is no restrictions, right? There is no limits in terms of what you can do because it's your expression, right? Your expression, how you want to put it down in terms of words. And like you said, the
yeah,
beauty of it is you can come, from the love angle, you can come from the horror angle, you can come from the
mm,
sports angle, you can come from any angle you want because
yeah,
there is no restriction, there is no boundaries
yeah,
that you have to follow. It's your expression that you're putting down in words to express,
mhm,
what you're feeling or what you want to say about that. And it's a
yeah.
great medium to use for that reason.
I agree, and you can write about anything.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned about sending it to the publisher. Are you traditionally published, or are you like a smaller house publisher?
A smaller house publisher. I published with a company called Mindster Media, and I did that because of their association with Mariel Hemingway. They work with her, so that's what got me interested in them. I wanted her to be a part of this book, and thankfully, she wanted to be too. So that's how that I got that.
Yeah, that's a great, not only a great story, but just a great thing to have in the book because of that connection.
Yeah, yeah. So my dad was raised in Cuba, and The Old Man in the Sea was from Cuba, so I thought this is just a great fit.
Yeah, yeah, that does sound great. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's been great getting a chance to talk about your book. Your book's available, assuming Amazon. Is it available anywhere else? Any of the other sites?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much anywhere books are sold. You can go to my website too, and you can order it right from there, flickerinthewater.com.
Okay.
Um, but anywhere, pretty Goodreads. I mean, anywhere where books are sold, you can get it.
Okay, perfect.
I,
I
I
wanted to
would tell
remind you. Yeah.
I would tell people though to visit the website because there's a lot of things on the website that are not in the book that they'll find interesting as well.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
For the viewers that are watching, I will leave below the video all the links for Bob website, link for the book to Amazon as well, so that they have the options to go either place. And if there's any other links you want me to share, Bob, definitely let me know, and I'll put that in the description as well.
All right, Adrian. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on. I enjoyed talking about your book. I enjoyed talking about, how you put it together and the different angles and approaches you took. I absolutely love the connection with Mariel Hemingway and the book with because of your dad and everything. And it's a great story on that side.
Oh, thank you. Check out that website. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I definitely will. I definitely will check that out. Again, thank you, Bob, for coming on today. Thank you, viewers, for watching. And definitely, if you have a comment for either Bob or myself, leave it down below. We'd love to be able to answer you if there's anything you have that you want to ask. And definitely consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notifications so you don't miss all these amazing stories and authors coming up. Thank you again,
All right.
viewers. And definitely thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Adrian.
Goodbye.